we're pretty well going to be working inside of Matrix for the better part of the session. So let's open that up here. I'll also just resize this, make it a little bit easier to see here. And maybe I'll just zoom in a tiny bit. There we go. Hopefully that's easy enough for everybody to see on screen here. Okay, and as I mentioned, with the 3 searches that we're going to be talking about, okay, first one being the search widget, then we have our speed bar, and then our search drop down where we're going to do a residential. So right off the bat here, if you are a little bit newer with Matrix, on your main page, it's your dashboard is created from all of these different widgets that you're seeing now, and these can all be moved around and manipulated. So your search widget might be in a little different spot. Perhaps it's kind of in the center of the screen here, right? I just kind of put mine up into this right-hand corner. And if you're not seeing it, perhaps it's been closed out and you just have to drag it out of the additional section. But when it comes to, this is an inquiry that I get pretty often. I'll get a call, a member will be asking, hey, I'm looking for a property that I know was up on the market 3 months ago. When I go in and I search it through my residential tab, I just cannot seem to find this property no matter what I try. Okay. When you're in that scenario, that's really where this search widget becomes very, very effective. If you know the address or you know the description or the details of the property, usually this is the very best place to run the search, because then it'll give you an entire history of what the system knows about that property. It'll tell you all the different times that it was up on the MLS system. Every single exchange of hands or status change that happened, we'll be able to see that all at once from a search here, where if you know by running a residential search, it's going to be status related, it'll be timely, right? A lot of things are going to come into play where you can get a whole history of a property here. When you run a search in here, however, you do want to be pretty specific. You might omit a couple things like the suffix. What I'll do first is I'll just run a very unique address. This is one kind of in St. Catharines Floral area, 55 Burness. Okay, so you'll notice I'm not going to put the street type, really just with that. By running the search here, and perfect, we got exactly what we were hoping for in this case, where we have every single kind of exchange of hand, all the different status changes that we can see already, times that maybe the listing had expired or when it went to a firm sale, right? And we could see all the way back from 2012 to 2018, and it looks like it has, this is probably the current owner ever since 2018 type of thing, when this one closed. So we could see it closed in 2018. So we get to see all of that very quickly at a glance by making use of that search widget. So I'll just jump back to it right now. The only time that maybe you want to be a little more specific, right? If you notice, 55 Burness was a very unique street name, right? Burness is not going to show up in a whole bunch of different cities, where if I did something like 100 Main Street, right, I would expect to have just the understanding that we're searching all properties across Ortis right now, right? Not only OMDREB. So we're likely to get things like Hamilton, Milton, right? All this different type of stuff. If you're seeing out of area, these ones are historical listings. Okay, so it just means that they were added to the system later on down the road. Maybe there are things from like the 90s and things like that that were just historically added, right? St. Catharines, a whole bunch of areas where if I was using a very common street name, well, maybe I would put in a little bit more, right? And maybe I would do like the city, like there are 100 Main, and maybe I will say Hamilton, for example. If I wanted specifically that one, and not all the other noise from the other locations kind of thing. Looks like a lot of the listings actually were this one, a lot of different postings in Hamilton apparently for one that looks like a commercial one. When it comes to the search, okay, just like how we ran it specifically in that search widget, the same is going to be true for this speed bar. Okay, so it kind of comes down a little bit based on preference. However, the speed bar does give you additional options that you can use it for as well. So just not to be overlooked, I'll say a couple sentences about it before we jump into the search dropdown. So if we were to run it in here, okay, same thing, 55 Burness. The important thing for the speed bar, however, is you particularly want to omit any suffixes. I would never put like Main Street, right, Burness Avenue, or whatever the case may be. Just 55 Burness, and it will yield the same results as the search widget. So we have the same thing from 2012 to 2018. And if we go back, one thing that you'll notice, and this is going to come up in a lot of the different screens that we'll be working in, especially this residential kind of search from the dropdown, and this is so commonly overlooked, you have a little question mark right next to most fields that will give you an explanation of maybe the capabilities that that little section has. In this case, it's actually a pretty detailed document here for the speed bar. If I go ahead and click on that little question mark, so I'll do that one more time here, just so everybody can see. I know it's a little bit small maybe on some of your screens, but to the left of the speed bar, if I click on this little gray question mark, it opens up this document, and it starts to tell me what I'm able to do in there. So I can drop an MLS number if I'd like. We can actually go through and use different short forms, such as A for active, SF for single family. It lets us do areas, price ranges, even as far as bedrooms, bathrooms, square feet, things like that. So more so than maybe only Burness, if I was to even maybe, you know, if it interests you and you kind of work with it a little bit and kind of get familiar with the short forms, but you can get really intricate and do some of the ones that I just mentioned, right? Active, single family, maybe I do want just the Oakville area. We can do a price range as it showed. I show up in the thousands, just like the default for searching. So if I did maybe, just to be simple, 1 to 2 million, right, with the 3 zeros added. And I mean, if we really want it, we can start adding bedrooms and baths. Just run the search with that. It asks you to confirm. So I did engage the search. It just wants us to confirm, hey, did you want this? So you can see when you hover over it, status is active, city Oakville. It shows us the price range and that the property will be residential. And when you select that, it will only show you properties that meet that criteria. So the speed bar not only shows you specific properties, you can even run intricate searches inside of it if you do enjoy more of like a little bit of a short form there when you get familiar with it. Okay, so definitely something to kind of have a look at. Just remember you have the question mark there. Use it as a little bit of a guide, and it gives you really kind of an indication into a lot of the short forms that might be used in the other screens and the other search areas. Okay, so really, really good information here on this question mark. Right, you can see expired, canceled, right? Start to get an understanding of things that are going to be common throughout the other screens. One more kind of one that we get inquiries about as well, and it's very commonly overlooked, and it's super unfortunate. But right here, towards this right-hand side, okay, you have a recent searches section. Okay, so don't forget, it holds up to your most recent 50 search results or searches that you ran. So even having a look through here, it looks like, you know, before the office closed at 4:30 on Friday, I even ran like a last minute search here in the system. Well, I could run that exact search once again if I really wanted to. Okay, if I click on that view all 44, it'll show me an even larger history of all the ones that have been run, things like Monday, Tuesday, right? Different times that I was in the system working, and it shows you how many results you get. So if we go, well, even if we just do the last one, which had 465 results, right? Just by clicking on it, right? We don't have to retype this. We don't have to go back in and reset our criteria if we had done it in this section. Like it'll give us that whole breakdown and just rerun the search again for us one more time. Just remember that up on the top right-hand side, you do have this recent searches area. Okay. With that, it does wrap up kind of the 2 or 3 little obscure utilities on the front page here. Let's absolutely start going through some features here in more of that search dropdown. Okay, and the first one, as I mentioned, is going to be the idea of the wildcard. Okay, so what a wildcard is basically, it's just a little character that you can use when you're running a search. And what'll happen is it'll free up the search a little bit. It'll give us the ability to kind of say or tell the system either, hey, anything can come before this specific word, or perhaps anything can come following this specific word. Okay, and how you use this wildcard feature is by using the asterisk on your keyboard. So for me right now, it's Shift-8, that little asterisk. Well, even as simple as searching for another member in the system, right? Maybe you're looking for a colleague or another real estate agent that you met on a showing, didn't quite remember their entire last name, but you want to track them down to get in contact. Maybe they give you some information, like there was a potential buyer for your listing, right? Well, let's have a look at how the asterisk would work in this case. Perhaps you remembered from main screen here, right? My last name being Eric Garand. Well, maybe we can use it in the sense of, right? Maybe I don't know how to spell that completely. And if we go ahead and we just drop G-A-R-A, which would be telling the system the start of this last name needs to be specifically G-A-R-A in that order. However, anything can be following that. Let's see all the search results. Okay, so this is the wildcard feature. We're using the asterisk in this case. And if we scroll down a little bit, I know mine's really zoomed in. You might be able to see yours without zooming down or kind of scrolling down. But we're seeing that there's 7 search results. Okay, we can we'll have a look at the list here and what it kind of came up with by clicking on results, and we'll start to see, okay, based on last name, there's a whole range of different members, individuals that are available to search in this MLS system, and we would very quickly be able to determine which one, oh, that's how it is. It's actually the letter N that comes next. You'd be able to find a colleague or another real estate agent very easily this type of way, right? Just by making use of the asterisk feature. The reason why I'm showing you this asterisk and this wildcard is because when you compare ways to run searches, right? The matrix system is very, very rigid in the sense that what you search has to be exact. You're going to see that theme throughout kind of definitely in this training, right? The whole concept that it really isn't a Google search. The system's not going to say, hey, did you mean den, right? And you just kind of spelt it incorrectly or something like that. It's not going to give us any suggestions. It's just not going to give us the listing that we're looking for if we made a typo or we're searching for something incorrectly, right? It's just going to give us 0 search results instead of giving us a suggestion. So that's where the wildcard becomes very, very effective. It lets you, think outside the box and run searches a little bit differently. Okay, and the first place that I want to show you, so as if you noticed, I did just click on residential here under the search dropdown. And where we're going to run searches now is actually just by finding keywords in the public remarks. So rather than select any details via property information or price just yet, I'll just bring your attention to the center of the screen. We'll scroll down here, and right here in the public remarks section, let's address that asterisk one more time. Okay, so for example, if we go ahead and I'll scroll down a bit more, hopefully, oh, perfect. I just want to be able to see the search results here. Whenever I'm running a search, I'm constantly keeping an eye on how it affects the matches that we have. And in this case, I'll show you very quickly what will happen if we try to put something in without making use of the asterisk, for example. Something that seems very common in the Halton region is the idea of an in-law suite. Right? Maybe that's too much. We'll go with in-law, okay? So if I type in-law, it's very likely that this word has come up in the remarks section, right? I know that there isn't like a checkbox or something that you could put in to say, hey, yes, this property has an in-law suite. So typically it's something you'll find in the remarks instead. Well, what we can do here, and what you're seeing is, I'm getting 0 matches, and kind of on purpose a little bit here, just to show you that that's how specific the system is. It's looking right now for a remarks section that's made up of exactly these characters, nothing before and nothing after, for me to find something, it would have to be spelt this way, and it would be the entire remarks section would just be one word or one compound word. Okay, so what we would do is, if we put in the wildcard feature on either end of our search, that's what frees it up. Now we're telling the system in-law is the part that has to be kind of tracked down. However, it could be anywhere inside the remarks section. It could be at the beginning of a sentence, you know, in the middle of a sentence, where the wildcard is letting us know that anything can come before or after the word, which is finally finding something, and now we can make use of this when we run a search. Okay. Next thing to kind of make use of and kind of to show in this case is we may have to think outside the box a little bit here, where if that was the correct way to spell in-law, however, maybe not every listing agent spelt it that exact way. So maybe we'll bring in a couple extra ones just to get a comparison. We were pretty close to 400 results by looking at all of the properties that had that in the remarks section across Ortus. If we were to maybe just do it as one word, as you can see here, I kind of just took away the hyphen. Right? Well, here, these might be important properties to share with our client. We found another 74 options, okay, just by spelling it incorrectly, for example. Okay, same thing is going to be the case. It looks like very close to the same number. There's actually 73 listings that have a space instead of a hyphen. Okay, so what we're looking to do now is not only just this asterisk feature and this wildcard, but we need to combine all of those searches to get the most effective number of results. Okay, and how you would do that is by separating them with a comma and a space. And I'll just retype this time all three of them. So we have in-law with a space, in-law all one word, remembering to put the asterisks on either end. And if we go ahead and this instead, it would combine all of those different types, the one in-law, in-law, and then in-law with the hyphen. And instead of the 390 results we had initially with just the correct spelling, well, now we actually found upwards of 500 listings, okay, which is going to be a lot better. And I mean, you of course can continue and write even more if you think that there might be another way that this was spelled in the remarks section, right? But now we can actually find properties, start from here. And now that we have 522 listings, right, we can go look at the results that we have. We can start specifying location, price, right? Well, we would work from there as we continue to keep an eye on our matches, trying to get to a very effective, you know, results section for our clients. Okay, so that would be really kind of a combination here of how to make use of this asterisk feature. I find a lot of members calling in asking, hey, like, there isn't a box I could check for go stations. What would be a good way to do it? Well, you might have to be a little creative, right? You might have to go into the remarks section, find the different ways that someone may have spelled go station, transit, different things like that. And you might be able to pull up some effective searches that way. Okay, but it does require a little bit of creativity, of course, like you saw in this case. And what I'll show you as well, just like on that front page, okay, not to be overlooked, right here, the question mark is referring to this open section. Let's say, you know, a week down the road, you're wondering to yourself, hey, I know Eric mentioned something about the wildcard when we were talking about the remarks section. I don't remember for the life of me what it was, right? We have Canada Day coming up. You might not get a chance to try it out and stuff. Well, just think question mark, right? Right on that question mark, you'll have all your answers. Okay, if I look at this, it'll show us the remarks help, which will talk to us about the wildcard. It gives us the information. It tells us how to combine them by separating with a comma space. And you even end up with a whole bunch of additional ones that you could try for yourself as well. Okay, so you can see how we made use of the asterisks in this case. All of it's available. It's right there, just a click away. Okay, if you ever need it later on. Awesome. So that does bring in kind of that section on the wildcard. It really, really can bring in, and I always hear kind of members using some very creative ones to find different ways to approach searches, because this form is more like an info data sheet, right? It might not be 100% perfect and relatable to what your client's looking for, and that's where a little bit of your creativity comes in, especially with things like the remarks that listing agents are including. Okay. So at this point, what I'm going to do is we're just going to jump into that final search that we're going to be running. We're looking to create some results in this case, and then we're going to start talking about the auto email. Okay, because in order to, maybe I'll introduce the auto email just very quickly first. So if you haven't created one just yet, what an auto email is going to do is it's basically, it creates a portal that your client is able to view information about different listings. They go into that portal. Let's say you sent them 5 different listings inside of that auto email. Well, a little portal is created. Your client clicks on it, and they can view public information about those 5 listings. The part that's really intricate and keeps your client in the loop when it comes to an auto email is it will also send them new search results if they do meet your criteria. Let's say that a property meets the criteria you chose 5 days down the road. Well, that new listing can make its way into your client's portal automatically, and now they have 6 that they can be viewing. So it's a very interactive way for your client to stay in the loop, that you can keep the conversation open and market properties to them. Okay. So in order to create an auto email, however, we first need search results. It all comes from a search. So we're going to do a basic one here. We're going to go to a residential search, and I will show you how I prefer to approach almost every search that I run in the system. Honestly, I approach it a little bit differently than most. You'll decide for yourself if this is the way that you would like as well. But I'll show you a little bit of a foundation of kind of the first 2 or 3 things that I do when I approach a search. Okay, so I did just choose residential here. We're just going to leave it active. I know that active continuing to show kind of just was checked here. So I'll just keep it for active. But honestly, the very first thing that I do every time that I approach a search is I jump into this price here and I actually put a 0. Okay, and I'll tell you more about why I do that in a second here. So I just put a 0 in here, and it would require me to scroll down, unfortunately, just because I'm so zoomed in. But I'm doing this on purpose so that I have 0 matches. Okay, my whole idea behind that is because the foundation that I like to build starts at the map. I like to take a visual, I like to draw on the map to choose which area I want to actually run a search from. And it's very hard. You might have noticed if you've done this in the past, it's very hard to use the map if there are 5,000 plus available listings, right? So if I take that 0 away, and if we were to go to the map right now, right, it would just be so saturated with different listings across the different areas. They all get pinned into groups, and as you get closer, it's just like so much noise on the map. It's very, very hard to work with. That's the whole idea of kind of why I choose to, sorry, hopefully I'm not making you too dizzy there. Let's go back to the criteria page here. That's why I really like to zero out my price. When I zero out my price, it's just a quick way, mental note for myself that I freed up my map, right? If there's a 0 here and I jump to my map section, well, you'll notice all the listings are gone. We have no search results. We have a clean map that we can work from. Now we can start to set a bit of a foundation. Okay, and what we'll do is maybe we'll just go, I like to use this Glen Abbey area here. And what we would do in this case is rather than go into the criteria and start, choosing freehold, sale, bungalow, all that kind of stuff, that's stuff that I do. That's the last step. First, we set a foundation. What is our client looking for? Are they looking for a property in a specific area? Normally they would, right? Well, you can make very effective use of some of the drawing tools here on the map. They're just at the top of the screen here. So you'll notice INRIX drive time, right? A circle radius, you can draw a rectangle. Oops, I went too fast there. If I was to draw a rectangle, things like that. right? Let's talk a little bit more about these drawing tools, just to make sure everybody's on the same page about them. INRIX will be the last one that I'll talk about, actually, because there's probably a couple more things to be said. But what this will allow you to do, okay, if we start even with the radius, right? I go and I select this drawing tool, and what I can do is whatever section I choose on the map, well, now I've just set a border for either all, is this the region that I want to include, or is it the one that I want to exclude? Okay, and that can be determined when you hover over that, just the red dot that it creates, right? Well, if I was using this as my area, right, if I go back to my criteria and take away the 0 now, well, when I go back to my map, it's the only place where listings can exist. Okay, I didn't have to specify that it was Glen Abbey, or I want to say that this is West Oak Trails, maybe? I forgot, yeah, West Oak Trails, right? Or Westmount, or whatever the case. I may have 3 different neighborhoods in this circle right now, where, I mean, Glen Abbey spans really like this whole big rectangle, right? Westmount might be like this square here all the way to the 407 possibly. Well, when you choose your neighborhoods, you might be doing too many properties or too large of an area, maybe too small of an area, right? Here we have 3 specific. We might have gone over the border of 3 neighborhoods, but this is more specific to what our client was looking for, right? So I'll show you a little bit more about that. I'm going to go put the 0 back. We have the clean map here, and we'll just go back and get rid of this shape, okay? Well, that was just, I mean, really, we did kind of choose a quick one. It was just the radius tool, okay? We saw the rectangle already. You do have different drawing tools like the polygon, right? Perhaps I want to do specific blocks, right? Well, maybe it's just these 2 squares, right? The 2 blocks here, well, I guess that's a lot more than just 2 blocks, but, right, maybe that's more specific to what your client's looking for, right? Maybe your client happens to work in this area here and they just want like a quick commute over to kind of this area where they work in this plaza, for example. Well, maybe this is more relevant to them, or maybe it even includes this section here, right? Well, that's where kind of you get to use these drawing tools to kind of make use of that. Right. Then you have a freehand polygon, same thing, except it lets you, like, more so than just, right? Doesn't have to be straight lines. That one will draw freehand however you want to make the shape. Right next to these drawing tools, you have a layers icon. This is a crucial one that can really give you a whole lot of information about an area. So you'll see it's kind of like a stack of blueprints kind of thing. It's called layers. And when you click on it, it gives you different kind of views that you can put, or borders that you can set on top of your current map. Okay, the one that I find most effective is the neighborhoods one. If I activate that, well, it's actually going to tell me the borders that were set out by the different boards. Okay, and this is not talking only just the Halton region, right? We can see what Guelph chose, what Kitchener, Cambridge. We get to see all of the different Ortus boards and what the neighborhoods look like. So it can be really effective, right? I don't have to call up Guelph and ask them to mail me like a neighborhoods map or anything like that. You're a click away from them. It's right here. It's a little obscure sometimes, but if you click on, you can go to your map anytime, click on layers and activate and deactivate the neighborhoods. It is extremely useful here. And as you saw right earlier, what I was trying to say is I might have made the circle here. Well, technically I have like a portion of Glen Abbey, a portion of West Oak Trails, and also Westmount, right? You'll see that that may end up happening. And at any time you could just kind of either activate that layers icon or remove it, right? So it kind of helps you when you're going to draw. Technically, I could draw a polygon right over top of certain neighborhoods or certain portions of certain neighborhoods, for example. Right? Very, very helpful when you're drawing. So the very, very last one, as I mentioned, is right here, INRIX drive time. This is a very fun tool that you can use, and it really does give you a bit of interaction. Could be a little personalization that you do between yourself and your client. I'll show you a quick example here. So I just clicked on INRIX Drive Time, and what it does is it uses Google Analytics to come up with just driving patterns, okay? Just like how you search on Google Maps, how long is it going to take me to get to Oakville from my current location? Well, it's using that information, okay, the Google Analytics. And if I was to put in, for example, maybe where I work, which is our main office, 125 Navy, Oakville. Right now, I'm just kind of doing a webinar from my home office. However, when we are back at the office, eventually, 125 Navy is our home base. Okay, I'll just enter so that it accepts and confirms it. Well, what I'm trying to do is say, okay, well, maybe my client, like what we're trying to find is that like our client maybe shared where they work. Maybe they told us something like, hey, I'm not overly specific about the property or the location of the property, let's say. I just want, you know, one thing, I don't want to commute to work for any longer than 20 minutes, for example. So I got to drive there. The office opens at 8:30. Maybe I need to be there by 8:15 at the least. My max drive that I would commute would be 20 minutes, for example. Well, if you set that, it'll actually draw it for you with whatever the Google Analytics came up with. Okay, so you'll notice this, and kind of the fun part about the whole driving, kind of the fact that it takes those driving patterns and includes them in the search, is that this is much larger than what it looked like 3-4 months ago when everybody was on the road, right? There's fewer cars on the street. I can get much further currently, as an example, okay? But if it just kind of pins as the really kind of like the center or the hub of where that is, and then the outer extremities would be, right, an estimated 20-minute commute at that particular time, right? So I can find a property for my client all the way out here. That'd be my maximum. I can't do anything past the 407, or else they wouldn't be, it'd be more than a 20-minute commute at that point, okay? Well, let's go ahead and we'll just do another one here. If I click on, well, you know what, let's show you this one first, actually. So I just want to show you the analytics and how it can change. If I was to hover over here, we can change the drive time info, okay? Let's leave it at 20 minutes, keep the same address, but let's just do 3 a.m. Just randomly work with me here so that we can see that, right? The assumption is that 3 in the morning, fewer cars on the road, I should be able to get further. And perfect. So it's given us what we were kind of looking for, right? You might be able to go all the way to this from the 401 to 125 Navy Street in 20 minutes if it was at 3 in the morning and there's just no cars to be seen, for example, okay? So think about that Google Analytics. That's what it's kind of using that information, right? It's going to look very different if I choose rush hour, like 5 p.m. If I choose 5 p.m., I'm probably going to get this, like this tiny little area, right? Especially if I ran this last September, for example, it would have been like a tiny little section. I wouldn't have gotten very far at 5:15 p.m., for example, but you can run it for things like that, okay? And the part that ends up being really interactive for your client, think about a scenario here where perhaps it's a couple, right? Maybe it's like a husband and wife or something like that in this case, and maybe one of them works in Milton, the other works in Oakville. Well, you can run more than one INRIX drive time. You can have the two drawings on the map, and wherever those shapes intersect, for example, like if it was something like this and like this around the two places where they work, well, technically you're looking for a property in this region here that they overlap, okay? Just pretending that these were two INRIX drive times. So you get, you know, it's like an extra personal touch you can put when you're searching alongside your client for the right property for them, okay? So INRIX is a really cool one for that. Let's delete these out. It's absolutely, now that you have a good understanding of all the types of kind of drawing tools, things, different tools that might come up on this search, let's absolutely specify an area. So what I'm going to say in this case, I always for the training, I end up kind of at Heritage Way if you've seen me run this in the past. But let's maybe choose our polygon tool, perhaps the area that's most relevant to our client. They just want something like this region here. Okay, well, maybe I can draw that shape. Okay, knowing that it's only going to include properties within here. Okay, and let's go ahead and go to our criteria page. Of course, that last step, right? Taking away that 0, knowing that when we return to the map, now we're working with the right results. Okay, and now that I have something, a solid base here with the drawing, that's when I'm going to take some steps and maybe start. Now that I have a look at them, right, we're only dealing with 14. We did choose a very small area and only active status, right? No conditional sales inside of this area right now. Like we really did just choose active status. Okay, we're starting to see some other things, however, possibly some condominium leases, right? We have a varying price range, right? Some that are close to $1 million, some close to 1.5 million. Even up to 1.7, okay, and other leases, even residential leases potentially. So now we're going to specify a little bit more, right? Our client really wanted that area, kind of that suburb near Heritage Way. Well, let's break it down a little bit more. Maybe they are just looking for freehold, right? Just a sale. Okay, and perhaps it was in a specific price range as well. Well, maybe we'll specify here, well, the 1.1 million was maybe a little bit on the low side for them. Maybe they want something more like this, that $300,000 price range of 1.3 to 1.6. Okay, I only chose a couple of options realistically here, right? Freehold, sale, and the price range. Okay, and now let's jump in and see what we're left with. Okay, even still 6 properties it looks like, right? So we have 1.5s. Okay, and the 1.6s. Actually, I think I'll be even more specific just so we don't have so many properties here. So I'm going to go back to the criteria, and I'm actually going to change this to 5, I think is hopefully enough. I just wanted to get down to about 4 results. Perfect. Okay, there we go. So now we have a property here, Mayor's Manor, right on that 1.5. We have 1386 Heritage Way. We have Sadler Circle, and another one on Sadler Circle. This one a little bit on the lower side in that price range, for example. Okay. So, of course, when you're going to go into this and speaking with your client, you're going to be looking at the things they mention. Hey, we want to have a specific amount of square footage, perhaps, or the amount of rooms and bathrooms and all that criteria, right? That's all stuff that you're going to kind of work out. But as you can see, we found a very quick way to find this area, right? If my client had mentioned, yeah, we only want to be in Glen Abbey. Well, I mean, Glen Abbey technically would have spanned this huge region, right? This big area east to west, all the way from around up here to this area down here. Well, maybe after a little bit of investigating, it really was just the neighborhood of more Heritage Way here, okay? Or perhaps even they wanted just the area of Heritage Way, but also kind of a little bit into Westmount. Right? Well, we can do that specifically on the map when we're drawing it, okay? You just take off the neighborhoods icon here. Okay, so I do have a question that came in privately here. I'll just read it out. And it may end up, I'll tell you, it probably will be end up being something just for the sake of time that I'll keep for the more of the question and answer period. But I do have one back to the speed bar search. Can you explain the way to search available and sold on Shadeland Avenue in Burlington? Okay, really, really good question there. So yeah, you would be looking into that question mark to find kind of what's going to give you those exact ones. But I believe we might be able to figure it out. Just for the sake of time, though, let's revisit that more in the question and answer, and we'll try some stuff in the speed bar together, okay? For right now, I'm just going to bring us all back to this search where we now have 4 properties that we want to present to our client, okay? First things first, we're going to go to the results section, okay, where we can see more of a single line display. That would be this one here, where it's more in like columns and shows us the information of these properties. Okay, well, maybe at the end of our search after the discussion and what we found, these four really matched what our client was looking for. Okay, well, what we want to do now is we want to get this information out to them. We're going to do that in the form of an auto email, that auto email that I introduced earlier on. So we're going to create a portal where they're going to be able to see things like these public remarks, images of the properties, all the description, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And how you would do that is it ends up, first thing is selecting which ones you'd like to include in that. Okay. Because we were very specific, we have 4 properties that we want to share. Well, I mean, we do have to select them. You could just kind of select all of them from this top check mark here. As soon as you select properties in this list, that's where your action buttons become available. Okay, if I just wanted to do a straight email to myself or my client that'll give this information, maybe a bit of a portal they could jump into, that would just be the direct way here. It's right available on that first page. Okay, but perhaps we want to take it one step further to that idea of the auto email. Okay, the auto email is going to be taking all this criteria into account. And if there's a property that hits this area and matches this criteria, maybe 3 days from now, well, then my client would receive that one in addition to these 4 when that happens on Wednesday, which could be really effective, right? That's the whole idea of the auto email. Well, that option is inside of the save section. If you click on save, you'll then see the title new auto email. Okay, so I would basically be creating an auto email with these 4 that I've selected. And now it takes us to the page where we're creating that auto email. So let's talk about that definitely a little bit further here so you can understand the whole composition of this auto email. First thing that it'll ask you to do here is assign it to a contact. Okay, there has to be a recipient for this auto email. I'm just going to choose kind of a fake one here for myself. I'll just send it to Eric. Okay, it allows you to choose a subject, right? This you're really like, picture that you're pretty much creating an email, right? The subject line, you can be as professional or personal, however you want, right? What I'll do is very long title here. However, I chose this just because I know I've chosen your future home quite a few times. It usually is my default for an auto email title. Near Heritage Way is going to be our differentiation. So when we look at it in the list, we'll know which one we're talking about. It's likely that all my auto emails are being sent to myself. Just in this case, I don't have any personal clients or anything. So more for testing and training. But let's use this as my subject in this case, your future home near Heritage Way. Okay. And you'll notice, right, kind of that idea of the email. It will give you a default for the welcome email. Okay, in order for this auto email to become active and to send new listings to your client, it sends out a welcome email which includes a link. Okay, there's going to be a link that your client's going to have to click to accept to the terms and conditions of this automated email that it's providing them. Okay, that's going to happen in this welcome email. Okay, if you want to change the way this, like you can type up a whole new message, right? Start to type. If you don't like the default that's here, feel free to change this however you'd like. It gives you the option of changing not only the welcome email, which is going to say hi, tell them they have a portal that's available to them, and to click on the link to accept the terms. It also gives you a recurring email, which is going to be more like a reminder. Right, when we get to the reminder section, you'll see, right, you can type up more of a personalized message here if you'd like for the recurring email as well. So you really can manipulate the whole kind of look of the email, including your signature, where you can have things like, little images, whatever you end up wanting to create here. Just click on edit your signature. You can make some changes here, just like how you can manipulate the body of the email. Okay. It then brings us and shows us the criteria that is specific to this auto email, right? What is actually going to be broken down here? So we have things like residential, active, freehold, sale. Remember, we chose those in the list. It will also take into account this map drawing that we did, which is the latitude, longitude. If you remember, it was kind of that little, I guess it was almost like a pizza shaped area of Heritage Way. Okay, that's what this is. So anything that meets this criteria moving forward is going to end up in your client's portal. Okay, if a new property goes out 2 weeks from now, if the email is still active, they'll get access to that property in their portal. Okay, getting into a more advanced settings here. Okay, things that have to do with how you're going to manage this auto email. Well, one thing really great one to kind of say a couple of words about is Concierge Mode. Okay? As I keep saying, right, if a property meets your search criteria, it'll reach your client. That's where Concierge Mode comes into play, right? Maybe you don't want every single new property to reach your client right away. Perhaps you want to filter a couple of those out, or maybe you want to have a bit more power over kind of like which ones go through to your client and which ones can you maybe decline, or yeah, you know what, that doesn't really match what they were looking for. You know, rather than bombard them, something like Concierge Mode will allow you to filter through them manually as well. Okay, more so than just your search, Concierge goes on top of that. If I enable this, okay, what will happen is, as you can see, Matrix alerts you on the home page automatically as new searches are found. So what will happen is, if you enable Concierge Mode, right, maybe on Wednesday morning, you open up Matrix. Well, at the top left-hand side, you would just have this little notification tab that's kind of showing, and it would say you have one or you have two properties requiring your attention on an auto email. You would just click on that. It would show you the listings. You can have a look at them, and then you could decide if you would like to put them through to your client. Okay. The Concierge Mode is that filter that lets you do it manually as well. Just be careful with this, right? Because here's the part where now you're going to be a little more accountable for how they interact with their portal, right? If you are away for 7 days, well, your client's not receiving anything during that time. If you're not staying on top of Concierge Mode and approving those listings, your client's not receiving anything new. Okay, so just bear that in mind. You also have display settings here. By default, anything that you send to a client is always going to be sent in client view. What that means, client view is the public information, things like images, public remarks, right? It hides sensitive information such as the seller's name, the cooperating brokerage information, the commission structure, things that might only be more for the eyes of a colleague or another realtor, or, you know, more maybe not something that you want to send to every single client, for example, for, I mean, privacy reasons and stuff like that. Well, you can change this. Just be careful with it. Okay, it tells you how to do it in this description. Okay, you can change to member full, right? Member full would be the way, if I wanted to send a listing to my colleague and I wanted my colleague to have access to the commission structure, well, I would have to send it in member full. Okay, that happens in this additional tab. So if you click this drop down, it opens up the additional display options, and I can go ahead and choose something like member full, where now whoever receives this, they'll be able to see the commission structures, the private information. So I would only suggest this if you're sending it to another real estate agent, for example, and they requested it. At all other times, I'd probably leave it to the default and only send everything, especially to just general clients. I would send it in client view. Something here that you really want to be careful about. But whenever you send a property, it will automatically be set to client view. You do have the option to send private information if you choose to do so. Okay, and that will happen here. Rest is pretty straightforward here. Getting us to our schedule, which is kind of one of the last settings to discuss here. So what will happen is I can choose something, right? This is just a way to notify your client of new properties that might have reached their portal, right? If I choose something like as soon as possible, it'll actually send a bit of a reminder email, or in this case, the recurring email, right? To advise your client that a new listing is available in their portal. Here's a link. You can go and view it, right? Well, as soon as possible would actually email them as soon as a new one hit their portal, right? If you have a very open, where, you know, ours was a very specific closed search, right? If I did an open search and it was like all of Halton, well, technically they could receive like 1,000 emails in the next who knows how many days, right? So be careful with this, right? You only want to use that, like in this case, we only had 4 listings. We're expecting that if we choose as soon as possible, I'm not expecting that there's going to be 10 new active listings come this Friday in this area that we set out, right? So just think about that. That's what the ASAP is going to do. Where daily is completely different, okay? A daily reminder, what this does, instead of sending an email right away about the listing and notifying, what this is just a reminder email that will happen on the schedule that you choose. If I choose Sunday and Wednesday in the AM, well, that means that Sunday morning, around the time of 8 AM or so, our client is going to receive an email that just says, hey, you have an auto email. Don't forget, here's a link if you'd like to go check out the properties in there. Okay. If there's nothing that's changed between Wednesday and Sunday, it's still going to send that email. It's just a reminder, more like a courtesy reminder. Hey, you have a portal, don't forget. Okay. Very, very different than this one. During the time of Wednesday to Sunday, for example, if there were some changes, like maybe a property became active on Friday, another property became active on Saturday, right? Well, then there's a bit of a change that happened. Well, the reminder on Sunday is going out no matter what, whether there's traffic or not. But if there were some additional properties that were added, it will give them a little bit of a summary. It'll tell them, you know, Sunday morning, still getting that reminder, hey, you have an auto email. You did get a new property on Friday and a new one on Saturday. Here's some detail, and you can go check it out. Okay, but just know that that's happening whether the client went in the portal or not, right? Because when that listing hit your client's portal on Friday, they might have already seen it. They might have seen it Friday evening if they're really keen and they always keep an eye on their portal, right? Where Sunday's still going to give them a bit of a reminder, right? But just bear in mind how they're going to interact with it and stuff. This is really specific. It's just, like if you choose every day of the week here, they will literally get an email at 8 in the morning every single day of the week telling them they have a portal, even if no new listings came in. So just be careful with this one as well. There's kind of pros and cons for both types here. Just bear that in mind when you create these, okay? As soon as possible compared to daily. And then monthly would be the same. It would just be the first of the month. They would get one reminder. Don't forget, you have a portal. Here are some things that happened last month, okay? I'm gonna choose ASAP for this one because we were very specific. We only had 4 listings, right? We didn't have like 12 listings or 15 listings. I wouldn't expect my client to get really saturated by this. But with that, it really wraps up all the different settings on this page. We just hit save, and it will confirm that we've created this auto email with the title that we chose. Now let's go and have a look at that auto email as far as more of the settings that are concerned. Okay, something that's accessed in your My Matrix section. In this dropdown, you have one that is called Auto Emails. And if you click on this, it gives you an idea of all the different auto emails that you've created in the past. Okay. It also gives you 3 different status types where you can keep track of how currently, right, whether they're active, deactivated, if they're working, or if they're just kind of in limbo right now and they're not activated just yet. Okay, so there's 3 different icons you can see here, right? If it's been disabled, okay, maybe you disabled it yourself by selecting it and disabling it, right? Maybe this client hypothetically has already found a property, or you found a property for your client and you'd like to deactivate or disable or even delete this auto email so they stop receiving listings. Well, that's where the red circle here with the exclamation point, that is a disabled auto email. Okay, we also have this status here, the one that we just created, your future home near Heritage Way. That's the one from today. Well, it stays, and if you hover, right, it'll tell you client must click first email's link to activate. So it's saying that it's been sent, right? But what we're waiting for is this auto email is not going to be sending new listings. This is a status to show you that it is currently just in limbo. The welcome email's been sent. However, it is waiting for the client to accept to the terms by clicking on the link. And then it will become like a green. See how this one's like red and filled in? Well, it'll be like filled in green with a little white check mark. That means once it reaches that status, everything is working properly. Client is receiving new listings that meet the criteria, and everything's working well on their portal. Okay, so 3 different status types: the red with the white exclamation point, open green, which is just waiting activation, and then you have the completed and working properly one, which is like hard green with a white check mark. Okay, but you can manage your auto emails here, right? Even if I wanted to click on this drop down for the Heritage Way one we created, it'll tell us the search criteria. It'll give us a chance to make changes to it. We can resend the welcome letter if our client has lost track of it, or if you know, a couple days down the road our client hasn't clicked it and they were like, hey, I don't know if I received it. Well, you can always send a new one, kind of thing, because it's not going to send them new active information until they accept the terms. Okay, and then eventually, of course, probably going to change the status to disabled at some point once you find them a property, for example. Okay, so as far as the auto email, let me see if maybe I have just, I know our IT manager, Brian, set me up on one. Okay, here we go. So future home. Here, I just jumped in my email here. Your future home was created by Brian and sent to Eric. Okay, so in this case, Brian created a portal for me, right? This is what it looks like for your client. They receive an email, right? Here's the default reminder email. It talks about the property. This is probably set up as soon as possible, and it tells them where to click to view the portal. Right? Well, this is an auto email. We're inside of a potential auto email where Brian, our IT manager, would be my representation in this case. Maybe he's right. He's a buyer agent, and I'm in the market looking for a property. Well, this is what your client is seeing, right? This is the auto email. It has currently 3 listings, right? It did have a brand new one, which was 1320 Henry Court. So which one's that? Oh, looks like it might even be outdated. Like that email might have been a bit old and I don't have access to that listing anymore. Unfortunately, I didn't get to it quickly enough, right? So that's where, like, right, your client is going to be looking at the properties. They have access to do that, but everything in here has to happen in a timely manner, right? Your client's going to see the description, the location, all the public information, and of course, omitting the private remarks about commission structures and stuff like that. But it gives your client a really interactive way that they can keep an eye on properties in the market that are relevant to them and keeps you engaged with them. It's a very, very effective tool. I find so many people are really using this specifically to market properties to their clients. Okay, so really, really effective way for that whole two-way communication to stay open between yourself and your client. So as far as all the content for today, that really does wrap everything up. I'll just do a quick conclusion here, and then we'll absolutely be jumping into a question and answer. I know I had a question previously about the search bar, or sorry, the speed bar search that we're going to jump into and answer first. But please I would take this time if you'd like. If there's more questions, things that you're wondering, questions, concerns, comments, would love to hear it in the chat. Feel free. As far as the topics, okay, just thinking about everything that we talked about today, okay, we did start with different types of searches that we could run in the system, right? Remembering when it comes to a specific search that we know the property, maybe the address, and we want to find historical data, the different status changes, the different years that it exchanged hands. Okay, really effective to use the search widget for that when you know the address. Can also be done in the speed bar. Okay, and then the speed bar does have really intricate ways that you could run quick searches as well. Okay, we also have this recent searches, right? If we wanted to find those exact 4 listings that we had for our auto email, well, it's our most recent search, and this will keep 50 of your most recent. Okay, so always remember a couple of these very important tools on your front page on your dashboard. Okay, next up, we jumped into a basic search where we introduced the wildcard feature. Okay, so just remember, we used it for more of a last name to find maybe a colleague in the system, and then we went and used it in the public remarks, got creative with the word in-law, and shown different ways to find that in the public remarks section. Okay, following that, we ran an actual search by zeroing out our price, jumping to the map, drawing an area, okay, coming back to the criteria and taking the 0 away, just to find properties only in that area. Okay, really, really good way to start a search before jumping into all your intricate criteria, because sometimes if you choose too many things at once, you might end up at 0 matches a little too quickly. I know definitely something that was happening to me pretty often before. I find it really effective to start with the drawing and add in your criteria, maybe one thing at a time until you have a good amount that you can present to a client. Okay, really, really effective way to approach it, to find results and then create an auto email, right? We finished up by describing that whole process, looking at an auto email, so that you know an effective way to create that portal for your client, which in the end is going to be a really, really interactive tool between yourself and who you're representing. Okay, so wraps everything up here. I definitely want to extend a big thank you for all of you that made it out to the session. I definitely had a lot of fun kind of putting this together, and I hope that you have a great rest of your afternoon